Alright, just wanted to make this update video. It's been a long time since my last update, maybe 6 months, maybe a little more. I wanted to just talk about some of the new equipment that I added and just the new look of the tank, and also a few topics about some of the leading causes of inactivity in peacock mantis shrimp that I've observed. Right now I've just got done feeding a portion of frozen brine shrimp. I'll actually add a few more here to encourage him to come out a little bit. I keep him in a little net here. I'm going to just put this in the tank. Just let them go in, just like that. This encourages more active feeding behavior, obviously. But we'll just go over the equipment real quick here. I added some LEDs, 2 small Corellia Nano pumps there in the back that I'm using to push the brine shrimp around, an MP40 to keep the flow really high in the tank, and it's good for the coral also. A protein skimmer there, and that's about it. Pretty much everything else is the same. A lot of coral, mostly SPS coral, which is why I added the LED lights. And unfortunately, I do apologize about the quality of the video. LED lighting is not the best for photography or for video, so I do apologize for that, especially the cooler Kelvin temperatures. This is probably about if you're familiar with Kelvin temperatures, is about 18K, maybe 19K I'm running here. So it's a very blue color to the tank, so it looks a little bit psychedelic on video. A couple things happened in the last few months. There was a bout of shell rot that he had to deal with. I noticed some rust-colored spots on the back of his shell. Wasn't too bad, but did have to deal with it in the standard methods, bringing the lights down, changing to a better burrow, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and soaking his food in Celcon. I do that normally. I also increased feedings to encourage a molt, which eventually he did, and when he molted off that shell rot and luckily got through it. But I had a burrow originally over near that rock with the zoas. That burrow eventually became too small as he grew, so I added this burrow here and noticed an improvement in his behavior because this burrow is larger. It's also a black PVC pipe, which means there's a lot less reflectivity inside the burrow, which means it's darker on the inside. He feels more comfortable in the burrow now, and I think as a result he feels more comfortable out of it. So he's been encouraged to come out a little more. But I've noticed, like I said, leading causes of inactivity, one of them is just having an improper burrow. If it's not long enough, if it's not the right width, and if it lets in too much light, mantis shrimp, generally speaking, feel less comfortable and are more inclined to stay in the burrow. LED lighting, I'll be honest, for a peacock tank, not the best. Really not the best. It took a long time for him to acclimate to the lights, and I could tell that occasionally when I first added the lights, he would look up towards the surface of the water, almost trying to determine what was up there. And I really seemed to think that maybe it was a threat to him, maybe just the way that the light is focused in 2 distinct points there. I'm not really sure what it was, but peacocks, in my experience, don't respond as well to full spectrum lighting. Obviously he's out and about now, and he's overcame his fears, but it did take a while, so unless you're willing to put up with a long acclimation period, I wouldn't recommend LEDs or high intensity LEDs for a mantis shrimp tank. I also went through some periods of high nitrates. They got up to 60 to 80 parts per million. That contributed to a significant decline in behavior as well, in activity. Now, as a result of a combination of vinegar dosing and the protein skimmer, my nitrates are somewhere between 0 and 5, which is fine for this tank. In addition to not being healthy for the mantis, the coral also didn't like the high nitrates, and so I got rid of my hang-on back filter. That was one of the contributing causes. Vacuumed out the sand bed real well. I had a battle with cyanobacteria also that was difficult. I ended up having to go against my normal policy, and I used some chemicals, some red slime remover to get that out, because no matter what I did, no matter how many water changes I did, I could not get rid of cyano. And that also seemed to be deterring my peacock from coming out and wandering about the tank like he normally does. So good husbandry is important, but every now and then it fails, and I generally try to recommend people stay away from chemicals, but have to admit that I use red slime remover to get rid of my cyano, and it, as you can see, it works pretty well. Not having live food sources in the tank is also a real detractor to active behavior, and encouraging active foraging is a healthy activity, obviously, for a mantis. That's what they do in the wild, and they quickly learn whether or not their foraging trips will be rewarded with food. And if they feel like they won't be, they stop foraging. They just stay in the burrow and wait for you to feed them frozen food or whatever, and don't worry about coming out and looking for snails or crabs or whatever you have in the tank. I always try to keep something in here. At all times I have different live food sources. Right now I have an emerald crab that lives in that center rock right there. I have a peppermint shrimp hiding behind this rock on the left. And obviously I feed foods that encourage active foraging behavior, like this frozen portion of brine shrimp. And actually have noticed he's actually a really good swimmer. He likes to swim up into the water column to catch the brine shrimp. Most peacocks like to stay down near the substrate, but this mantis actually likes to swim. He may or may not do that here in a minute, but he really does enjoy coming out and actually catching, just like that, catching the brine shrimp right in the water column. So it's a really another interesting feeding behavior that you can witness. And of course, frozen brine shrimp are fairly inexpensive as well. So I just wanted to share some of those observations that I've made, some of the experiences I've had over the last few months. Look at some of the changes to my tank, and just report that all is well. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll post another update probably here again in a few months.